In this video, I plan to take you through my basic steps and thought process on these two different pieces. Both of them were fairly experimental. It's been a while since I've done any kind of nature background focused, and I downloaded new brushes, which hopefully I can share in the description for you guys to check out and download. They're all for Procreate. And I just really wanted to mess around and see what I could do with them while trying to convey different depth with lighting and stuff. I couldn't really wrap it around my brain, so I knew I needed to actually go and sit down and practice it for once. One fun fact is that I actually used a picture of clouds that I took as a reference for this, so I can build up the layers differently to match the kind of values and scale that I saw in my picture. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. I have a ton of cloud pictures on my phone. All of them are cumulonimbus clouds because they're the storm clouds that get really high and they've got a lot of layers to them. So with the different forms, I always imagine landscapes with them, and I finally drew it. I highly recommend looking at clouds to anyone who wants a spark to help them with their creativity. The rest of this was for me to use the brushes to create scale in the drawing, make them smaller in the background and then closer up obviously in the foreground. I think a good pro tip beforehand is to use as many texturized brushes that you do have. There was one called Primsol, I believe, already in Procreate, and it's got a canvas kind of feel to it, and I like to use that a lot recently with my lighting. If you're lacking a bit of detail, I definitely think texture can help boost your game. I certainly like it more because it makes it less digital and more like traditional art. Here's a quick recording of my layers for this one. You could see how I separated parts of the background and then the middle ground and the foreground as well. And at the very top, when I click on and off the layers, that's where I just merged them all together and refined it, so I added details that way. Now for more of my thought process. I, again like last time, blocked in the very base colors. These were lighter because I knew later on that with the lighting I was going to add, they were going to be a lot darker. A lot of the forms I would cut away at, like the waterfalls maybe, or even in the foreground. So the brushes that I would place and I would use, like for these trees or later trunks on, I would have to go back and forth with Control Z, oh what a wonderful thing that is, and just get a feel for what I really liked. There was definitely a lot of tweaking with the composition. I even moved one of the backgrounds close to Drishy, my OC, right by his head, over to the right a bit more because it fit better when I ended up renderizing his character. Then I added this dark spot at the top because I wanted it to be more of an underground, but not really. You see, in this place, the gravity reacts differently here, and so that's also why the waterfalls are swooping in and they're not following what naturally we would think them to. Now comes time when I actually blocked in lighting, per se. I duplicated the layer that I had because it was all roughly in one. Then I changed it to an overlay, blurred it, so it kind of made a glow effect. And then I lowered down the opacity. I selected a certain area, like where the waterfalls are, because I wanted them to stand out more from the rest of the place. Right now, on top of that, I've already created a multiply layer with a blue color. So I would go back into more of the areas and draw directly where I want the shadows to be, adding more of a contrast to everything. Adding lighting to backgrounds is certainly a different process than how I would do it with a character. I do the same thing with color blocking as I would, but with characters, I usually it's all more, how do I say this? It's refined. With the line art that I have, though it could be sketchy at times, I roughly know what I'm doing. I've got reference sheets and stuff for the characters that I just color drop over. But with backgrounds, you're starting completely from scratch most times. And that's where I tend to get a bit overwhelmed, because when I block it in, I have to take a step back, see it as a thumbnail for really what it's meant to be. I think that's the best advice I can give anyone who's like me, and when I go into a piece, I want to think oh, I don't want to merge all of this and squish it around because then it diminishes the quality of the piece. But if you gotta just go with it. You gotta sacrifice some things. So if it's gonna be more of a thumbnail, then you're gonna have to realize that things are supposed to be mixed around. And in the end, it might actually help your overall vision, just like any mistaken art can end up not being a mistake at all. Wow, I just got all Bob Ross on you. You're so welcome. It was at this stage that I began to lose my mind. I was going bonkers. I had to text Jazzy, my friend, and like get her to consult me on this because I wasn't trusting the process. I couldn't handle it anymore. It wasn't meeting my vision, and even though I knew it wasn't at all finished, I was afraid that the finished product I wouldn't be satisfied with at all. I think I'm going to actually share some of the conversation I had with Jazzy, just so you guys can see where I was at. I'll just put down what Jazzy's saying, like what she actually texted me, and then I actually have audio recordings of me talking to her, so you're going to hear those exact recordings. Bro, I'm stressing out about because when I draw it, right, it's not exactly what I'm thinking in my brain. Like I'm trying to like do some basic stuff. So when I draw the stuff for the biomes, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted. But it's like everybody tells me like, oh my gosh, you're so good at drawing backgrounds, and I'm like, thanks. I don't know what I'm doing. Now back to the main painting. So, now that I've got all of the lighting blocked in and whatnot, I've actually gone back to go with my brushes and add the details that I've been needing to help reassure myself on this whole process. And most times when I was putting the brushes down, the colors weren't fitting the background as I'd hoped them to. So I already planned beforehand to put those on a different layer, and when I put them down, I could adjust the hues and the color differently in the settings. So then I could also lower the opacity and make it blend more into the background as I'd originally thought. After that, I decided to clean up the rest, like the bottom left side where it's more of the mountain edge, and then also the waterfalls and the green around that. When I added this touch of blur, it seems like I took it away, but what I actually did is that I lowered the opacity so far down so that it kind of added just the most subtle kind of glow in the very back. You probably wouldn't be able to tell in the end, but I decided at the time it was a good touch. So sometimes I'll do that with a few things to help soften the line art or even just put a bit of the colors together in a more easy kind of tone. Now I'm goofing around in the foreground with a lot of different brushes that I downloaded, all of them new as well, so that was really fun. It's crazy how much easier and like quicker things are when you've got the right kind of brush. Man, I think that was my biggest struggle beforehand, was that I was trying to paint every little detail by hand, and just realistically, I mean, I aspire to do that if I ever make something traditionally. Like, that just makes it so much more powerful to me, is to see that everything was literally done by hand. But digital art, when you've got to do things and like make it kind of quick, it's just a lot less pressure on yourself to use the right brushes. And of course, a good thing to know is that not always can brushes save you. It also comes with some technical skill and like eye to know where to place them and how things should work. Best thing I recommend is literally what I did in the beginning of this, and that's just experiment completely. Blank canvas, just mess around with the brushes. And if it's bad, then it's bad. It was supposed to be that in the first place. It's easier when you've got no expectations, and obviously it's more difficult when you do. Unfortunately, here is when I lost the rest of my recording for the speed paint. So I'm hoping to make a different video when I do another drawing. And that one can go into a lot more complex and like things with the multiply layers, overlays, stuff like lighting like that, and how I actually go in and decide where to add different details. Until next time, Ratlings, take care.